There's one thing I need to talk about before I forget, and it is your brisket trimming and how it's become like a thing. It's become like more than it's like. How did that start, and what's the psychology behind it, or what's the I guess not thermodynamic, I guess thermodynamics, but
Yeah,
what's the reasoning behind all this?
I would say I have an obsession in a lot of things barbecue related. It started with watching Franklin videos. I think there was one with him at like Texas A&M trimming a brisket or something that he came out with years ago. And Aaron Franklin has such a technical mind. Like listening to the guy talk for 10 minutes, you realize how the guy is a smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really picked up on like how there's a thought behind everything he does. And so when I first started trimming briskets, obviously like anyone went on YouTube and tried to figure out how to do it. And that was when at the time, like I said, there's so much more information out there now. But at the time, really Franklin was probably one of the few guys who had a trimming brisket video out there. I studied it kind of like I did with his other videos at the time and just like got it down to like every movement and studied every single thing he did, like what direction he was, moving the knife, like at what points when he was like, whether he's on the flat or the point, how he was holding the knife, how he's moving the knife, like not just like what he was verbalizing, but what he was actually physically doing. I don't know. I just got obsessed with this, like creating this perfect thing, and I've even studied like, and this sounds just crazy, but like I've like looked at like unfinished works by Michelangelo and like his sculptures and looked at like, okay, what was he doing to create these sculptures? Like, how did he go about it, right? Was he like doing one section and finishing it completely, or was he going through the entire thing and slowly working its way around? Like how was he going about finding this gem in this piece of marble? I mean, it's not too different, right? It kind of like I learned like, okay, this is the technique he kind of implied and so used, and so it's like, okay, so how do I kind of use some of that when I'm trimming the briskets? And so it's just something I've always, I don't know why, it's like I wanted to just keep it's kind of like with Todd, it's like I wanted to keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it until like I realized one day I was like, man, these are pretty good. And so then I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll start putting some on Instagram or whatever, because I hadn't for the longest time. And then I got, quite a reception from people. I was like, oh man, I didn't realize this many people appreciated a good trimmed brisket. And so, it's been fun. Yeah, no, it's crazy. And so I've had a lot of people, reach out to me, and, I'm grateful for the support. And it's, if I could leave my mark on barbecue in any way, even if it's trimming briskets or whatever, like that to me is just so cool. To me, it seems, and I'm not saying I take credit for it at all, but to me, it seems the briskets that people are trimming today versus the way they were trimming them 3 to 4 or 5 years ago is on another level.
Oh, yeah.
Like as a whole, they're taking it to a different level. And so if I had even a tiny small part in that, that's just kind of cool to be able to say.
Is the reason it's aesthetic, but is it also for airflow? Is it a perfect shape for airflow? Or?
Yeah, 100%. Because these are getting put on these 1,000-gallon offset smokers with massive convection and airflow going over them, and so a lot of it too is from looking at finished briskets and going, okay, well, this is picking up a little bit too much smoke here. This is getting a little bit too dark or whatever, and so you kind of then study that and go, okay, how do we make it so that there is zero resistance on that thing? Like, our Austin Smokeworks smokers, and I don't know if any of the other guys are doing this that currently build smokers, but the entire inside of the smoke chamber has completely been sanded down. So like there's nothing to catch air in any way inside that smoke chamber, because a 1,000-gallon propane tank has these like bands that go around it and all kinds of stuff that could catch air. Austin Smokeworks like completely like gets that to nothing. And so it's the same kind of concept of like, making sure that nothing's catching on anything. And you just got this, I always pictured like a Porsche, like a wind tunnel. Like, I don't know why, because a Porsche, like a 911 Porsche, it kind of like in a very like loose way resembles a brisket to me, because you have this big fat back end and like, the nose that comes down. And so like I envision like this like perfectly aerodynamic car like going through this wind tunnel. And so Yeah, there's definitely that science behind it, and so you probably don't need to take it to the level that I take it at to like get a really great brisket, but I just kind of kept focusing on it and doing the best I possibly could. So now, I mean, that's just the way I trim a brisket. There's no, I don't trim it any other way, and so
And it doesn't take you any longer just because it's just something you've been doing and doing and doing.
no, exactly. I focused on the process for so long that I mean, I can knock out a brisket in 2 to 3 minutes.
That's
So I
awesome.
mean, it's and so we can. I mean, we can put them out quick. I mean, shoot, when I first started, I was probably taking half an hour. I mean,
Of course, yeah.
so,
And you were nervous and you want to, yeah, like it's and it's interesting. I've watched so many videos of different guys trimming briskets. You have a video or a
you
kind of
know,
thing on Instagram or
that is
anything?
that is the question I've been asked more than anything else. I have yet to put one out, largely because I haven't had the chance to like to because to do it right, honestly, would be like a 3-part mini series, honestly, because I could
Yeah.
talk about trimming briskets and the logic behind the way I do things as far as the type of knife I use, like the way I sharpen it, why, like how I sharpen it. You know, the briskets as far as what direction am I angling the knife on different parts of the brisket, right? Whether it's a left or right side brisket, how my knife angle change. Like there's so many things
Uh,
that I can't just give you a 30-minute little quick YouTube like Franklin does, and like because to me it's not showing you really everything I actually know. And so, people think it's like I'm trying to like hide secrets or whatever, and it's really not it at all. It's more I haven't had the time or
yeah, that takes a lot. That's a
the
some
way to
make
do.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I would want to do it if I ever did it. I'd want to do it the right way, right? Where I really made sure I was really methodical about how I created this video and made sure that it was really done
Hmm.
so that it represents exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so I'll get around to it one of these days, but
That
yeah, it has
yeah,
nothing to do with, yeah, it really has nothing to do with me like trying to like be secretive or anything
yeah.
like that. I just, it's not my priority right now is
Yeah.
making
And you
YouTube
sort
videos.
and you sort of bought a restaurant. And it's
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the holiday
right.
season and the holiday season's upon you. Like it's there's like 2024 probably makes a little bit more
Yeah,
sense.
there you go. There you go.
Okay. Yeah,
But
but I
there's so
do.
many great guys out there. I mean, you got Joe Yim, Chuds, Franklin. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many guys out there that have fantastic brisket videos. And so, anytime people ever ask me, I tell them, I mean, there's a lot out there. And the other thing is too is, I mean, I've probably trimmed, I don't know, 65,000 briskets or something like that. I mean, I don't somewhere in that ballpark, right?
Wow.
And so, you know, at the end of the time, at the end of the day, it just takes time. I mean, you got to get the reps in. I mean, you trimming 10 briskets, you're not going to trim them the way I do. I mean, you just don't have like that, like the knife in my hand feels like an extension of me. Like I can literally hold my hand right now and feel the knife in my hand. Like, and so that just takes time to get to that point.
Yeah.
So,
What
yeah.
what type of knife are you using just for that, or do you use different knives?
So, I use and I've never actually publicly told anyone this.
Do
So
you,
this is going to be,
do you want to, or do you?
no, I don't mind. Because like I said, at the end of the day, I can tell you the knife I use, but whether or not you can use the knife like I do
No,
is a
exactly.
different thing, right? And so, and honestly, I think you'll cut yourself pretty easily using the knife that I use, I think. But anyways, I use a Victorinox 8-inch fillet knife. So that's what I use. And so, some of these guys use, I've seen some guys use like a brisket trimming knife, like a standard brisket trimming knife, not the ridged one, but just like the slicer.
Yeah.
And then they'll combine that with like a 6-inch curved boning knife. That to me takes way too much time because if I'm taking one knife, putting it down, grabbing another knife, I don't have time for that. And so I kind of found this knife that to me was the best of both worlds, was using this 8-inch, so like a really long straight fillet knife. And so you got to be careful with it because if you're like you can screw up a brisket really easily because the blade's so long.
Mm-hmm.
But once you learn it, once you figured out how to use it, it's really great.
Oh,
and so
cool.
and one of the things is Michael Wynett from Florida's Barbecue way back when, he used to make this trimming video of him cutting it with a brisket slicer. And man, it was like poetry watching that guy trim a brisket. It was so beautiful. And so it was around that time frame that like I started thinking to myself, well, what's a knife that I can use that can kind of replicate that, but doesn't require me to like use two different knives. And then the other thing that's really nice about it is, so it's an 8-inch fillet knife that's really long and it's really narrow. So the nice thing about it being really narrow is there's less drag. So like when I'm going through and trimming a brisket, like if you have a really like wide blade, like the wider and wider the blade gets, the more drag as you're
That
pulling
makes
that
sense.
knife through the brisket, right? And so when you're trimming God knows how many briskets, right, that drag will wear you out, right? And so it's kind of like using a light shovel versus a heavy shovel, right? Like it's the same kind of concept. And so that was one of the other like things I was thinking through was like I need also a knife that has less drag when I'm pulling it through. And so it was kind of a combination of like what I'm looking for in a knife that led me to finding that knife and using it. So,
Wow, that makes
but
sense.
that'll be part of my brisket trimming video one of these days.
Well, thank you.
So,
Yeah, people will actually physically be able to see it, but that was so. Thank you for
yeah.
that because I no,
No, yeah, I
I
figured if
dig
I'm
knives
ever going to
too.
say it, I might as well tell it on a platform where a lot of people can hear it and not,
Yeah,
you know, just a few followers or something. So,
it's fun. I dig knives. I'm always interested in what people are using for because it's across the board. People are using wacky stuff to
oh, yeah.
the cheap stuff, and then people also like are spending like $300 on it. It's like a
Yeah.
whole, and people collect knives. It's a whole. There's
Oh,
a whole.
yeah.
There's a whole thing, and
Oh
like
yeah,
seeing. I love
I'm
seeing
I'm
knife
I'm pretty
rolls.
I'm pretty simple. I essentially use that. I'll use like the 8-inch like scimitar or whatever to like break down like meat, and
Mhm.
then just your standard brisket trimming knife like bread slicer. So I mean on a weekly basis, I mean those are the three knives I'll use, and really I don't use anything else. I don't complicate things too
Yeah,
much for myself. I mean, and I guess obviously like if I like was processing vegetables and onions, I use your standard butcher's knife, but
yeah, yeah.
that's about it. So, but honestly, to me, what's the most important thing is a sharp knife, not necessarily like a super fancy knife. Fancy knives are great and all, but if it's not sharp, it doesn't really
It's not. Yeah, yeah.
matter.
And then yeah, we could go down the rabbit hole of sharpening if we
uh,
wanted to, but
oh
I'll,
yeah.